Today we're going to talk about dating in Paraguay. If you're interested in finding a girlfriend, if you're interested in getting married in Paraguay, then this video is a must watch because I'm gonna talk about things openly, honestly, my experiences, what I'm seeing around here in Asunción. So this video is gonna be on Asunción, okay? It's not gonna be on different cities because I didn't have experience dating in different cities, and also the people that I'm talking to, who I'm working with, they're all dating here in Asunción. So we're gonna get started here with the question, okay? Because you guys have been asking a lot of questions and we've been saving these questions over the past number of weeks and even months, and some of you guys contacted me through email, Instagram, YouTube comments, all kinds of different forms of communication that we had. So the first question is, do I have to speak Spanish to score in Paraguay's dating scene? You know, it's like so often we get asked this question, is Spanish a requirement? One thing you really need to understand about Paraguay is that Paraguay is a Spanish speaking country, and unlike Asia where you can definitely get by with English, it doesn't mean you're gonna have deep conversations or anything, but you do need the local language here. I mean, yeah, you can find women who studied abroad. You know, there are plenty of women here who've been like to England, they've been to America, they've been to Canada, Australia. You can find these types of women here, but they are a rarity, okay? They are not like the majority. Let's just be realistic about this point. With that being said, you need Spanish here. It is a matter of fact, you need Spanish. And talking, you know, I don't want to talk too much about other YouTubers, but there's a guy who's been coming to Paraguay for a couple months a year, whatever, and they got a YouTube channel too, and they made a lot of false statements about the dating scene here. They talked about, you know, how English is good enough, but that's just not true. And if you then look at how these guys go about dating in Paraguay, you can see that they're using dating apps, they're using Google Translator. I mean, this is not dating, guys. This is playing a silly online game. Let's just be real. You're not going to make it in Paraguay without Spanish. It's just not, you know. This is a Spanish-speaking country, and in most Spanish-speaking countries, most people speak almost no English. Little to no English. And 90% of people here, they don't speak any English at all. Even if they could, and you know, some of them understand, but they still don't want to talk English because it exposes them to risk, failure, embarrassment, and this is very embedded in the Spanish culture. You know, there are people, don't get me wrong, in the city in Asunción, it's less than 10% of the people who speak English. It's just a matter of fact, okay? Even if you live in the richer neighborhoods, there are tons of people from Argentina, Paraguay. Well, the ones from Argentina, they speak English probably a little bit more frequently than the ones from Paraguay, right? Argentinians speak English more frequently than Paraguayans. I think that's true, more or less. But the richer neighborhoods, you know, like where the most educated people are, you just have the highest chance of meeting people who are bilingual. It's just a matter of fact. It's like this everywhere. Whether you go to a little town, a little village in Germany, you know, in America, you know, if you're like in a little town in like Texas, talking to white people, they may not speak Spanish. You know, they only speak English, American English. That's it. Nothing else. And it's no different here in Asunción. So another reason why you want to speak Spanish is because you want to relate. And you can never relate by speaking English. You will never understand like what drives them, what motivates them, what their fears are. You will never understand how they really feel. Like, this country is a lot about feeling. Like, people in this country that do what makes them feel good. And criticism, you know, confrontation, these two things are not very welcome in Paraguay. It's just a matter of fact. As much as it's a matter of fact in the Philippines and many other countries worldwide, this is not just about Latin America and Asia. In many countries, criticism and confrontation are not welcome. It's just how it is. But to say that I'm now talking about, you know, just the question that we're being asked a lot and what we hear other YouTubers talking about, it's not true. You need Spanish here. So if you want to be successful dating Paraguayan women, and if you want to succeed, you know, in the long term, you have to speak Spanish. Like 90% plus of the time, people will need Spanish here. It's just how it is. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either not dating here or they're lying to you. And even if you're hiding behind Google Translator, which that other YouTuber does, clearly does, and you know, there's some people that are not into monogamy dating, they're into polygamy dating. But even if you're into polygamy dating, the people, I mean the women who are into polygamy dating here, they also only speak Spanish. So the only way that you can score is when you use Google Translator if you don't speak Spanish. or unless you get really, really lucky and you meet a girl who speaks English. But you've got to get lucky. You've got to get lucky because, again, it's the fringe minority. Not a lot of women here, unless potentially in the right neighborhood and you have a higher percentage. It's just how it is. Then the next question, which is a funny one because you would think that it's not that important, but I guess to the person who asked the question, it is actually very important. Do short guys have a shot? This is a question, it's going to be hard to answer for a tall guy like me because I just say, generally speaking, women prefer taller guys. Even the shorter women prefer taller guys, but I wouldn't let that prevent you from moving ahead, trying it out, coming here, dating women. There are plenty of women, shorter women, and the person in question, I think he pointed out his height, 5'2", 5'3", if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And he was very concerned about it. I don't think height is everything. And even if height matters to a lot of women, it doesn't matter to all women. You will find women who will be happy with a shorter guy because they're shorter themselves. So one of the things you can do is you can date women who are shorter than you. If you're 5'2", it's possible for you to date a girl that's 5'5" or 5'7" if you find one who is okay with dating a shorter guy. These women exist, but they're rare, okay? So if you want to be with a taller woman, especially a woman who's much taller than you, you've got to get lucky too. So what you can do is you can date women that are about your height. So if you're like 5'2", 5'3", date women that are like, 5'2", 5'3". That's your range. That's where you probably have the best chances to score. And if you have a fetish, if you like tall women, then maybe it'll be a little bit harder for you, okay? So you've got to put in more work. Dating is all mathematics, and you have to get lucky. I think for anyone to find the right person, the right partner, talking about monogamy dating, we need to get lucky, There's no such thing as success in the dating scene without luck. And it's about meeting the right person at the right time. But don't worry, you will find who you're looking for in Paraguay. There are plenty of women here who will happily date a shorter man. It's their preference. They like shorter men. Some women don't like tall men. Do black guys have a shot? Another important question that I've been asked quite a few times over the past number of weeks. So basically, this is not a country where there are a ton of black guys. There are black guys here, and sometimes I'm at the mall, I see a black guy with a local girl. Happened many times, and I think I've told this the person who asked me the question early on. I told him where I lived before, there was an American guy, African American guy, and he was together with a Paraguayan girl. So it does happen, okay? There are plenty of cases here that I can name. So do black guys have a shot? Yes, they do. And skin color is not everything. Skin color is not important to every woman. Yes, women have preferences. There's some women who will only date a guy that's white like a piece of paper, blonde hair and blue eyes, which also disqualifies me. There's some women who don't like bald guys or bowling guys. And sure, there's some women that only want to date white guys or local guys. But there's some women who will happily date a black guy, or who will happily date a foreigner, an Asian foreigner, white foreigner, black foreigner, whatever. Yeah, you will find that. So don't let that hinder you. I know it's a valid question, it's a concern, depending on what you experienced, and you want to make sure that, you actually have good options here, and you do. It happens. There are plenty of options here. Like I said, I've seen black guys with local women, so it's not unheard of. Is it super common? No, because there's just not enough of them here yet. But will change in the future, I guess. But it exists, okay? So don't worry about it. Then we're talking about, it's not an important one. Do you have to drink to be accepted in Paraguay? This is actually a very, very interesting question because before I came here in November, I actually didn't drink much. So drinking here, it is a big thing in Paraguay. That's definitely true. Like, people here drink a lot more than in other countries. People here drink definitely a lot more than, say, in Africa, in Northern Africa. If you go like Morocco, it's different, right? Or even in like Mexico, I think, in Paraguay and Mexico, I think people do drink a lot. However, does that mean to be together with a girl, you have to turn into an alcoholic? No. There are plenty of women here. In fact, I met women who do not drink alcohol. Or they told me, hey, I only drink socially, sometimes with family and friends. That's what they told me. So it exists too. It's not that every woman drinks a lot of alcohol here. I say it's more common for sure than in many countries, but it's not everyone. So you can filter that. If you're on a dating app, let's say you're on Tinder, you can filter that. You can put in under drinking, not my thing. And you will find plenty of women who will be happy to hang out with you, go with you to the park. You go play paddle, go play ping pong, go play tennis, go jogging. jogging, whatever, right? Go play billiards. You find activities with the people who you have things in common with. This is just normal, right? But no, you don't have to drink to be successful dating in Paraguay. It's just not true. Are all girls introverted? This is not a big one. And you would think like, hey, this is a very outgoing culture. This is an extroverted culture. Everyone here, is loud and they speak a lot. And well, to be honest with you, Paraguayans are actually a lot quieter than people are in Mexico. In Mexico, people are louder. In Spain, people are much louder than in Mexico, right? So there's different shades, It's like a scale from 0 to 100. I would say, generally speaking, people in Paraguay are not very loud. Sure, they exist. No doubt that when people get together, start drinking, things get out of hand pretty quickly, But generally speaking, yes, there are girls who are, introverted, and you can find that. I actually went out with a girl once, and I was surprised by how introverted she was, I had to ask her all the questions, and her answers were very short, even though we had the conversation in Spanish exclusively. So there was nothing going on in English, and it's just a personality type. And then I asked her, are you very introverted, or do you just have a bad day? And then she said, well, no, I'm just very introverted. I'm very to myself, and that's how I am. And that kind of changed things for me, because I thought that all women in Paraguay would be super extroverted. And after I met her, I'm like, that's not the case. And I actually met another woman after that who was also very introverted. Not as much as the first one, but she was also very introverted. And then I felt like, wow, this is definitely weird. This does not feel like Paraguay. Meeting this girl, we went out for cafe and cake, and I was like, well, usually it's them talking more than me. Spanish is not my native language, and I do struggle a lot of times, explaining myself and stuff. So, but it happens here too. Another question is, what is an acceptable age gap? And this is again a very tough one to answer. Like personally, being 35 years old, I didn't have a problem going out with women that are like 22, 33, even 35, late 20s. To me, everything was available. So I would say 10 to 15 years shouldn't be a problem. And then some of you asked, whether large age gaps are very acceptable here. I'm sure they happen. It's not super common, like the kind of stuff that you see in the Philippines and Thailand. And, I think in the Philippines and Thailand, and maybe Cambodia, it's probably the most common, where you see guys in their 60s and 70s with girls in their 20s and 30s. Here in Paraguay, you don't really see that, okay? That's just a matter of fact. You don't really see it as much. But I honestly haven't really paid too much attention to it, but I think this is something when you see it, it's pretty darn obvious. Sometimes you probably don't notice it because they're not holding hands and stuff, but I haven't really seen it here, or not as much as in Asia. So it's definitely a lot less. I'm sure it does happen, it does exist, but an age gap of 40 to 50 years is very, very uncommon here. Just not very common, right? 20 to 30 years, yeah, but 40 to 50 years, probably not. Do you meet women on Tinder? And this is a yes. Sometimes not. And if you're a friend of mine, or if you're a client and you've been hanging out with me here over the past couple of months, you've probably seen how I just randomly approached women in all kinds of different places, shopping malls, on the street, at bars, nightclubs, wherever, right? I just walk up to women and start talking to them. It's just a more natural way of getting to know each other versus using an online app where you never know who you're talking to. I'm not a fan of dating apps. I think for monogamous men, dating apps are not very effective. There are a lot of women with children who will hide it, who will not tell you about it. Even though in Paraguay, that's less of a problem than other countries I've been to. But oftentimes also the photos that women are using, or not oftentimes, mostly, okay? Mostly. The photos are old photos. They're not taken today. They're taken sometimes years ago. And online, everyone uses the best photos they have. It's just a matter of fact. So you never know what they're up to. And this kind of bothers me, and it makes me uncomfortable. But do I use Tinder? Yes, I do. Even for work, we're using Tinder. But it's not my main way of communicating with women or getting to know women. My main way here, like in Mexico, I just walk up to women, I start talking to them. And this takes courage, and often you're rejected for a number of reasons. And you have to be careful with this, because if a woman is at work, you have to be very careful for a number of reasons. You don't want to harass women. And secondly, they're just less likely to, be receptive towards you. They have responsibilities. They have a manager who's looking at them all the time. So it's a tricky thing. But if you're talking to women, if you're like at a bar, if you're like on the streets, and I'm going to give you a number of examples now. Like a couple of weeks ago, we went out, a client of mine and we went out to a bar. We first had dinner, then we went to play pool, and then we went to like a bar. And the table right next to us, there were two women, beautiful women, probably early 20s, late teens, and we were like, let's just approach him. Well, I had that idea, not him. I was like, well, let's try it out. And then just started talking to them and spoke Spanish only. It's very common here. And then we're just talking about what they do for a living. And they said, one of them said she was in marketing. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. I'm in marketing too. And then I asked her, like, what company do you work for? And she wasn't able to tell me the company name. She just showed them what she does on the internet and stuff, but it didn't make any sense. And I asked more questions and she wasn't able to answer any of those, which clearly told me that she was a hooker. So you have to be careful with that too. Like in bars here, a lot of women are hookers. So, and you can tell it pretty easily how like there needs to be some resistance level. Unless the girl is really drunk and she's completely out of control, then that's a different story. But usually women, you got to put in a lot more work, and they're usually, they're not so gullible. But if they're very gullible, they're probably hookers, or they're really up. It really depends. But even on the streets, like one time I was looking for a spa, I was getting pedicure, and I actually knew where it was. It was a pink spa where I went, and it was kind of funny, ask her, ¿Dónde está Casa Rosa? La spa Casa Rosa. And then obviously it was right on that street, but I just asked her so I could start a conversation, because I'm like, God, this girl is so beautiful. I'd be a fool not to approach her. And I did approach her, and it did work out. I did get her number. The rest is history. But it's kind of funny how that worked, because it's like this is a random opportunity, and I'm like, wow, if I'm not gonna approach her, this is a missed opportunity for sure. So I took that step, but I was only able to take that step because I speak Spanish. Now if you listen to another YouTuber by the name of he's going to tell you don't have to speak Spanish. Well, if you don't speak Spanish, you're not going to get these opportunities. You're not going to be there with your translator, if you can't bring a single word out. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So if you speak a bit of Spanish, doesn't need to be perfect. If you can get the B1 or B2, it's pretty good. You can have conversations, small talk and stuff. And if you're working on it more, which you will if you're living in Paraguay, then you can maybe eventually graduate and you can get to C1 and maybe even above, but you have to put in work. And women here really appreciate if you put in the work as much as they appreciate it in any country. If you're in Asia and you're dating a Vietnamese girl, a Thai girl, a Filipino girl, and you start speaking Thai, Filipino, Tagalog, or Vietnamese, whatever, the girl's going to appreciate it, and you will understand her culture, her family, friends, her norms, her traditions, all of that much better than if you're like, I'm not going to learn any of that because English suffices. English does not suffice in Paraguay. You need Spanish. And in Asia too, if you live in Asia for the long term, go learn the local language. It's just gonna help you so much. When you're on a date, do you pick up the tab in Paraguay? This is a very common question, since this is an emerging country, and generally speaking, the median salary here, the median income is actually quite low. So unless you get to date a chick who's pretty well off, most of the times you will be paying, and it is culturally expected that the man pays. It's just how it is. It's like this in Asia, it's like this in most of Latin America, if not everywhere. Of course, there are exceptions. But yes, I do pick up the tab unless a girl really insists and insists and insists. Definitely not on the first date, but if she keeps insisting like crazy, then let her pick up the tab. If she really wants to, and some girls are doing that to kind of prove to you that they don't want your money, which may be true or maybe not. So you have to really consider all of this. But yes, I've gone on dates where girls really insisted and insistent. But like I said, the first date they always pay, and I offer to pay all the time. It's just how it works for me. And there are girls that have a good income, and if you've been hanging out with them, but depending on what stage you're at in the dating cycle, you might want her to pick up the tab. Sometimes, if that's what you want, and if she insists, this is completely up to you. You can do whatever you want. Depends on what your dating goals are. Depends on the income of both. So this is really something that you need to decide for yourself. Just as a final note here before we wrap up this video, talking about the culture in Paraguay, this is a very non-confrontational culture. It is extroverted, but it is non-confrontational. It's just how it is across many Latin countries, okay? People in Paraguay, Paraguayans, they don't like confronting other people. This is something that I have spotted not only here, but also in Mexico. It's a little bit like this in certain countries in Latin America where confrontation is just not a big thing. If someone's not happy, they usually don't complain about it. They just suck it up. They take it, they get punched in the face and they're fine with it. So to each their own, I guess, but this is part of the culture. It's something you need to get used to, especially if you're from a very extroverted and confrontational culture, like in America or like in Europe, Australia, where whenever you have a problem, you typically confront people openly about it in a very direct way. But it's not like this in Paraguay. It's different, okay? And this is something that might require some time for you to get used to. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It is what it is. It is the culture, and chances of people changing are slim to none. What's been your experience dating in Paraguay? Is there anything you would like to add? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you need any help with obtaining a residence permit, open up a company, purchase real estate, rent an apartment, house, whatever, feel free to contact us now. You should see our website displayed right below the video. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite, and we see you on the next video.